Okay, awesome. So I'll just split our screen. There we are. Okay. Hey, Hannah, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Awesome. So we had a little rocky start, but here we are. And I'm so grateful that this beautiful woman is here with us today on Coffee with Carly. And Hannah is a certified fertility awareness educator and the creator of Holistic Hormonal Health. And we were just chatting, I actually found her work a few years ago when I was on my own personal journey of figuring out what natural birth control is, what it means, how to do it. And now here we are a few years later, and I'm just so excited to share your knowledge with more women. So as we dive in here, I would just like to hear a little bit about your story, about why you're doing this work, why it's important to you, and how you came to be where you are.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, first
Of,
of all.
of course.
I started using this method as birth control myself. I was kind of in the camp of, I guess I grew up in a family where we didn't really take a lot of medication. And I've always just been kind of like, well, if I don't need to take something like that, why would I?
Hmm.
So I don't think that I was as staunchly anti-medication at the time, but I always just kind of knew that hormonal birth control was not something I wanted to take. And so when I was looking up long-term methods of birth control for myself, I came across the copper IUD and fertility awareness as the two most effective, as long as they're used perfectly.
Hmm.
And I actually didn't ever want a kid at all at the time, which has changed now, but that was me at the time. So I really wanted to double up on the two most effective methods. And I kind of fought my doctors to get the copper IUD because at the time IUDs weren't as popular as they are now. And then I also read this big book on fertility awareness. And I was I loved the information. I thought it was amazing. But just like a lot of people who hear about this method, I ended up actually reading about it and thinking it was really cool. And I charted about half of a cycle. And then I went away on a weekend trip, forgot my thermometer, and totally stopped doing it. And now I look back at it and I go, oh, I had total psychological blocks because a lot of people do. A lot of people will hear about this, but they're like, I can't really take charge of my own birth control. Like, I know that that's supposed to be my doctor's realm, and I can't understand my body. A lot of women, we think about our bodies as broken because that's how they're normal. Like, it's normal to have cramps, it's normal to have PMS. We just think about our womanly parts of our body as broken. So thinking that we can actually understand them, figure out when we're fertile, and use it as an effective birth control method is really, really hard kind of mountain to get over.
Hmm.
So two years later, though, I finally started using it because I got fed up with the copper IUD. I was just like, why? Why am I doing this to myself? And I pretty much instantaneously fell in love with it. I
Did
loved
you
that
have
not
any, from using the IUD, did you have any negative symptoms from it, or you just didn't like something foreign in the body?
Yeah, a little bit of both, but it was primarily that. So I had heavier bleeding and cramps, which was something that wasn't my reality at all before I got it. Like I had light periods, I had no cramps. For some reason, so I had been using a Diva cup for a few years before I got the
Mhm.
copper IUD. And for some reason, the copper IUD made my Diva cup start leaking. And I don't really know why, but I actually heard that as an experience from a few other people too. And then I just had some weird abdominal trouble that I thought might have been connected. And occasionally I also had painful intercourse because since it's kind of inflaming your cervix, if your cervix gets hit, it can be more painful.
Yes.
So I was just like, why? Why am I doing this to myself? I know I have this other perfectly good alternative. Like, I don't know why I'm putting up with this. So anyway, I loved it immediately because not only did I have this natural, effective birth control method in fertility awareness, which is great. But what really made me love it was that I was able to get this window into my hormonal health and also really understand my body, and it was really empowering. Mm-hmm. So pretty quickly, I was kind of like, I'm really interested in teaching this, because I went around searching for a teacher just to make sure that I was doing everything right. Since I was using it as birth control, I wanted to make sure I was doing everything right and really get my questions answered. And unfortunately, teachers, they're still pretty few and far between to actually find a certified fertility awareness educator. But at the time, they were really few and far between. Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to do this myself. So that's kind of how I came to it.
That's amazing. So now when women come to you, when they find you, why would you say that most people come to you? Are they having problems with their birth control? Are they having symptoms? Is there hormone imbalance? Like, why? I did a Google search, I think, of like natural birth control. That somehow I found you through that. But what would you say is like number one reason most women are coming to see you?
I would say it's 50-50-ish. I mean, I couldn't tell you for sure, but I'd say it's about 50-50. No, less than 50-50, like 25-75. There will be about 25% of people who are on like hormonal birth control and wanting to come off.
Okay.
And they, of course, have like a rockier road to starting fertility awareness, because they have to get those hormones out of their body. Their body has to start learning how to produce its own hormones. So generally, it takes a little while for your body to regulate again. Mm-hmm. And then there's probably like 75% of people that they haven't been on hormones in a while. Most people have been on hormones in their life, but these people haven't been on hormones in a while. But they didn't know of fertility awareness, or they were using fertility awareness, but they're not really confident in their use of it, and they want a teacher.
Okay. And so there's lots of, I mean, someone can hear natural birth control, and that can still mean a lot of different things. Yeah. I know that from studying your work and from looking at your website, you practice and teach, I'm going to call it what I know it should be called, is a temperature method.
It's the symptothermal method of fertility awareness.
Okay, thank you. I knew that you would have something better than my version.
Yeah.
So can you just explain a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, so what you're basically doing is you are checking fertility signs that your body produces and that you're able to check in the comfort of your own home. You're able to check these every day, and it's telling you what's going on with your hormones, if you're actually able to get pregnant that day, and whether you're fertile or not, obviously. So it's kind of telling you, what you're checking is your temperature, like you said, and you're checking your cervical fluid. Those are the two most important ones. There's also an optional one, which is your cervix position and texture. But that's influenced by the same hormone that cervical fluid is influenced by, so it's not as important. Like, you don't actually, I don't do it. A lot of people don't do it.
Okay.
But temperature and cervical fluid are the big ones. And the really big one is cervical fluid, because cervical fluid is actually the substance that you need to produce in order for sperm to swim and survive inside of your vaginal canal, reproductive tract, because your vaginal canal is naturally very acidic. And normally your cervix is plugged up by this thick type of cervical fluid so that nothing can get in there. You have an acidic vaginal canal, and your acidic vaginal canal kills off sperm quickly and easily. It takes only a few hours. But the cervical fluid alkalizes your vaginal environment. It liquefies that thick mucus that's closing your cervix so that something can actually get up there. And it's also produced because of increasing estrogen levels, and your estrogen levels increase because of the maturing egg. So it's like right when your egg is maturing, then you have this cervical fluid, and then sperm can survive inside of you. So cervical fluid is opening up your fertile window. Mm-hmm. And then it also tells you when you've already ovulated, because it dries up. And I don't know, I think cervical fluid is the coolest thing ever. I could talk about it for like 12 hours, but it's pretty much like the most magical substance that no one knows of.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have noticed it before in their life because they've noticed that they've had times where they've wiped and they have more slippery fluid there, or they have they've noticed something that looks like egg white. And other times they wipe and it's totally dry.
Mm-hmm.
And that is cervical fluid in the works. And you may not have noticed that if you're on hormonal birth control, but if you're not on hormonal birth control and you're ovulating and your hormones are working as they should, then that's something that you're noticing every cycle, and it's completely healthy and normal.
And so this is where they say, like, look to your discharge, and there's a story, there's information to be told from that.
Yep.
And that's the cervical fluid, actually.
Yep.
Okay. I love it. That's amazing. And so this is something that you do every morning, right when you get up. Is that right?
Temperature you're taking every morning right when you get up, because you want to take your basal temperature so that it's not influenced by your activity or, by the fact that you just took a sip of cold water or anything like that. So you want to take your basal temperature. So that's in the morning when you get up. But cervical fluid, you're just checking it every time you go to the bathroom. And that sounds maybe hard, but I mean, you're just taking toilet paper, wiping at the vaginal opening, and then you're checking what's on the toilet paper. So it really doesn't.
You're there anyway. You're doing it anyway.
What was that?
I said you're doing it anyway. Just take it.
And it's something that fertility awareness, I mean, I don't want to act like there's no learning curve to it. There is, because it's like learning a new language of your body. But once you get it, it's so easy. It's not at all something that, it's more difficult to take care of my teeth every day, especially my teeth, because I oil pull. But so it's a lot more difficult to take care of my teeth. But even if I was just brushing my teeth, that would take me a lot longer than fertility awareness takes me every day.
Yeah. And so what is someone who, even me personally, I feel like this is something that I want to do. We use condoms right now, and that's just, it's not really that, I don't want latex. It's not that conducive to an intimate relationship, because it's a hassle and it kind of gets messy, and it's just kind of a pain. And this, my soon-to-be husband, this is someone that I have a conscious, connected relationship with. Mm-hmm. So what is the time in order, I guess, how long does it take, let's say, whether someone's on birth control or not, to actually be living and using this process? Is there, what's the learning curve?
Right. So I recommend, so when someone's coming off of hormonal birth control, sometimes it can take a while, because one of the things that hormonal birth control really messes with is your cervical fluid. Mm-hmm. So I recommend that when people are coming off of hormonal birth control, then they wait until they have a normal cervical fluid pattern, because you want to know that you're able to confidently check your fertility signs, and that your body isn't doing something that it's totally weird because of the hormonal interference that you've had.
Okay.
A normal cycle, it depends how closely they're working with the teacher, but if someone showed me their first cycle and they were past ovulation and I was able to I would be like, yeah, go for it. Even if it's their first cycle, because you can tell you have two signs, both cervical fluid and temperature, telling you you're past ovulation. Past ovulation is a very, infertile time. You cannot get pregnant at that time. But if somebody is learning from a book, I definitely recommend at least 3 practice cycles before you even think about trying to go unprotected.
Okay.
Just because you really want to make sure that you understand everything. And then before ovulation, it kind of depends on the person's comfort level. But usually the second to third, I'd say third cycle usually is if you're working with a teacher.
Uh-huh. And so that's probably part of the work that you do. Do you have a group program, or is it one-on-one? How does someone work specifically with you? I'm okay, can you call me every morning and tell me what to do? I know that's probably not it, but what does that look like in the capacity you work with people? Yeah,
so for me, what I have is I basically have a program where people can sign up at any time, and they go through the videos learning the method, right? And there's also a bunch of other ones that are like, maybe this is going to be relevant to you, maybe it's not, and maybe it's going to be relevant to you later. And people who sign up for my program, they have access to the lifetime of the program. So like maybe they don't want to know about breastfeeding and fertility awareness right now, but maybe later they're going to go back and revisit that video. So anyway, there's the core video, and you watch that, and then you basically know how to chart, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have a bazillion questions, because everyone does. Cool. And because of that, so what I have in my program is I make sure that I am very accessible. I have a Facebook group where people can ask questions, and then I also do bi-monthly office hours, where people can ask me questions live that they know I'm going to be there, and I do video and they're, asking questions. Mm-hmm. But then also I have the ability to do private one-on-one sessions, and email and text support, like if people want to add those on. So it's more like, it's kind of the same. The private one-on-one sessions and the email and text support are kind of the equivalent to the Facebook group and the office hours, but they're one-on-one. Yes. Instead of like if people wanted more privacy or whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
And I know that you also studied nutrition.
Yeah. So, I have a degree in nutrition.
Yeah. So how does that become a part of all of this? Obviously, because nutrition, as a health coach, I talk about food all the time. I live and breathe good, healthy food. So obviously what you eat has a huge impact on your hormones.
Right.
So where does that play a part in the work that you do?
Yeah, so one of the things about fertility awareness is that you are very knowledgeable about what's happening with your hormones after you use it.
Yeah.
It's always for better, but sometimes you'll think it's for worse, and that's why one of the things that you can kind of have a psychological block to in the beginning of using it is you'll be afraid of seeing what's going on with your hormones. Like some people, especially if they're trying to get pregnant, or if they're charting to try to figure out what's going on with their hormones, sometimes it's hard to be like, okay, I'm like coming face to face with what my body is doing and what it isn't doing. So you're really getting a window into your hormonal health. And I teach some of the basic hormonal health stuff, and I help people, if their charts look crazy, I help them kind of say, hey, well, this can mean low progesterone. This can mean that you have a really high estrogen levels, or your estrogen and progesterone aren't balanced. This can mean that maybe your thyroid should be checked. So you're able to see those things on your chart. And that's kind of where my health part of it comes in, I guess. Nutrition, I talk about it a little bit, but with nutrition, I'm so like, okay, it's an individual thing. Like, I think everyone should eat whole foods. I think people should eat organically / try to buy locally, like farmer's market kind of stuff, ideally, if you have that, especially if you have it year round. But other than that, I'm not a nutrition dogma person. I really think that everyone has like their own diet that's the best for them. And I don't think that there's like any one way that people should be eating or anything like that.
Yeah. And I honor that. And something that I've noticed in a lot of different types of fertility work is a partnering with more traditional diets, which really does lean on whole foods, the foods that your grandmother was eating, whether it's raw milk or local organic and grass-fed meats and tons of vegetables and whole grains. And so at the end of the day, that's what you mentioned, was just local, organic, and whole foods.
Right. If you can eat like whole foods and eat organic, you are like well on your way to a healthy diet already. Yeah. Like I wouldn't start nitpicking from there unless like something was going very wrong. And even then, like, not everything is diet. Not everything can be fixed by diet. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Sometimes I think people kill themselves over their diet when it's really like, well, what about this other element of your lifestyle that maybe needs more work than your diet, which is already pretty darn good.
Yeah. And stress being a huge huge
Oh, yeah.
components in fertility. So you're right.
Yeah. And
There's
you can even stress yourself out over your diet. So.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. So being open to understanding that diet is a component of it, it's not all of it. And of course, there's so many other factors.
Right.
Yeah. And so one thing that I had read on your website that I like walked in the room and was like, did you know this? that you can only actually get pregnant about 9 days out of the month?
Well, it's actually less, but 9 days is like when you're fertile phase, because of the way that fertility awareness is. And we can't say like ovulation happened exactly at this time. We can say like ovulation happened within this window. And we know that like when cervical fluid comes, it might come like a little before like the sperm could actually survive until the egg. But when cervical fluid comes, we'd have to say, especially if people's hormonal health is kind of off. But when it comes, we'd have to say, okay, we're potentially fertile. And then we have to like do a count also after ovulation happens. So it ends up being about 9 days for the potential fertile window. But really, like when you can actually get pregnant is like 6 days. Yeah. Because it's like 1 day after ovulation, because the egg can live for up to 24 hours and then sperm can live for up to 5 days. So it's like 5 days plus 1 day, and then the combo of the male and female fertility.
Yeah, to me, it's so exciting to think about having full control and understanding of what's happening in my body. You know, when the first time I made the switch over to unprocessed food, and when I began my journey, I began as a vegan. And I remember sitting in my car one day and being like, I can feel what's happening in my body. Like I can feel the digestion because my body was being cleansed out and reset. And I think that, and there was a lot of empowerment that went along with that really created my journey into full body, mind, and spirit connection.
Right.
And so, like you're saying, that empowerment of understanding what's going on with my hormones and when I'm fertile and when I'm not. And that's exciting.
Yeah. Fertility awareness. Well, first of all, fertility awareness is like the perfect method for control freaks, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
And it's funny because you would think it's kind of not, because it's one of those methods that like, if you mess up, then but I think that's why like it's good for control freaks. Because if you mess up, then it's very unforgiving.
Yes.
But if you don't mess up, then it's really not. So I think that it's a really great method for control freaks, but also like empowerment wise, that is literally my favorite thing about this method. And I think that's why so many people who use it fall in love with it. Like it's not because of a natural birth control method. Like, yeah, that's great. Like most of us want birth control at some point in our lives, and a lot of us don't like hormones. But what's really amazing is how much you're able to learn about your body and understand your body and appreciate your body in just like a totally different way than you've ever done before. And
I'm going to ask this, what's the percentage of like, if we do it right, if I do what I'm supposed to do, I won't get pregnant?
Well, I mean, no birth control is 100%, but it's 99.6% effective.
Okay.
As long as you're using it perfectly. So in terms of perfect use, it compares to the pill. The pill is 99.7% perfect use.
Okay.
And perfect use, first of all, I always like to tell people that perfect use of any birth control method is possible. Because I don't know why I hear this a lot, but people say perfect use isn't actually a thing. It's like a lab thing and it can't be recreated in real life. But it's like perfect use comes from studies of real humans using this birth control method perfectly.
Yeah.
So it's really weird, but for some reason people think that perfect use isn't a thing. But typical use means, everyone who's using it both perfectly and imperfectly gets put into typical use, and then people who use it just perfectly are perfect use. And I think also with fertility awareness, it's one of the almost easier methods to use perfectly because you have so much understanding of what exactly goes into using it perfectly and what's going on in your body, that it's like you're very conscious if you're taking a risk.
And I would imagine at some point, honestly, after years of doing this, that there's an intuition that comes into it too, really getting to know your body on such a deep level. Of course, we're not going to rely on that, but I imagine that there's that sense of, like I mentioned before, the communication with the vessel, that you have a knowing as to what's going on.
Yeah, you do, but yeah, I wouldn't even use my intuition on that. Like, I'm always charting my cycles, checking my fertility signs, but yeah, I think
like,
that
you
you
could
also,
try that,
it becomes more intuitive, the charting process too. Like, you become so familiar with your cervical fluid and, you know, what it is. It's just not, you know, you're not sitting there analyzing things for a long time.
Yeah. I love that. Well, I'm going to put a link to your website, to all the places that people can find you online, and a link to the programs that we spoke about. So it'll be right underneath the video for access for everyone. And I just thank you so much for the conversation, and also for being up to doing this work in the world, because it's really needed.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for having me again.
Yes, of course. Have a good day, Hannah. I'll talk to you later.
You too.
Okay, bye.